Good afternoon. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Climate and Infrastructure Committee for November 22nd, 2024. I'm Katie Cashman, chair of this committee. Before we begin, I'll offer a friendly reminder to all members, staff, and the public that the meetings are broadcast live to enable greater participation. Please speak slowly and clearly so that the captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. Thank you. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll to verify quorum for the meeting.
Councilmember Vita.
Present.
Osman is absent. Chavez.
Present.
Chowdhury.
Present.
Vice Chair Koski.
Present.
Chair Cashman.
Present.
There are 5 members present.
Let the record reflect we have a quorum. We'll start out with the consent agenda, items 2 through 10 on the agenda. Additionally, we have one item to postpone that I will move with the consent agenda. Item 2 is a grant application to the Minnesota Department of Transportation for the 2024 Safe Routes to School Infrastructure Program for South Falwell. Item 3 is a grant application to the Met Council Environmental Services to receive funding for homeowners to pay for sewer lateral repairs. Item 4 is designating and setting public hearings for the 2025 Street Resurfacing Program. Item 5 is approving a revenue increase to the Capital Improvement Program for the Asphalt Pavement Resurfacing Program. Item 6 is approving the concept layout for the Pillsbury Avenue Bridge project over the Midtown Greenway. Item 7 is authorizing a subordinate funding agreement for the Blue Line Light Rail Extension. Item 8 is approving an appropriation increase to the Capital Improvement Program for water distribution improvements. Item 9 is authorizing capital project closeouts. Item 10 is approving appointments to the Community Environmental Advisory Commission. And item 11 is postponing the Boulevard Ordinance that was postponed at the last meeting for staff to do more work. So while it says January 9th on the agenda, staff has requested we postpone this item to the Climate and Infrastructure meeting on January 23rd. Any discussion? Welcome, Councilmember Osman. Reflect his presence for the record as well. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair Cashman. I wanted to discuss item 11. I really don't understand why we're postponing the Boulevard Ordinance. It seems like there's way more than enough time before we have the next council meeting to have whatever's done that needs to be done with this. I'm still unclear of the uncertainties of this Boulevard Ordinance, and so I really don't know why we're delaying this a cycle and why something. What are the complications here? What is happening with this ordinance that people need until next year to work through?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. I'm not an author of this ordinance, but I do know that there was confusion about what the permitting procedures would be for and the fees involved in asking for permits to plant shrubs, to build gardens, raised beds in the boulevard, and what the different safety concerns are and different perspectives on that. And I'll also defer to Public Works Director Tim Sexton if you want to add.
Is Councilmember Palmisano the author of this? Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, Chair Cashman and Councilmember Vita. Just to reiterate what the chair said, we appreciate the opportunity to work on a technical guidance that we talked about accompanying the Boulevard Ordinance changes that have to do primarily with permitting, with raised beds, vegetation, and some other areas where there were some differences of opinion, and I think some learning that we wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page about what would be required and what would be required by permit in particular. And so we thought it would be helpful to develop the technical guidance to help everyone understand the way that Public Works was thinking about this before bringing the ordinance to a vote. And we have coordinated with Councilmember Palmisano as well as Councilmember Chowdhury, who are both co-authors on the ordinance change.
Okay. Again, I don't support delaying this. I don't see the value in delaying this until next year when this is a boulevard ordinance to grow boulevard gardens.
Anyone else have questions or comments on the consent agenda? Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Cashman. I'll just quick speak to the Boulevard Ordinance. I think as an author, I kind of also shared like a little bit of like, okay, what are we considering here when it comes to postponement? ultimately, I think if we're going to do this, we should do this right. And I think a technical document and some work from staff would help the discussion. And also, like, we have some time with the winter months coming before folks can actually utilize the boulevards from growing. So I think wintertime feels like a good time to just take a breath and make sure that we're getting this right. I know that other fellow council members that aren't authors felt pretty passionate of making sure that this ordinance came through in a way that represented the needs of their communities. So that's why I'll be supporting postponement, and we'll be looking forward to the conversations that we'll have with staff.
Thank you, Councilmember Vita.
I know it's not related for you, Chair Cashman, but I would have loved this kind of support for listening to Northsiders on the Labor Standards Board. I get it that people want to hear from their community on this boulevard ordinance, and there's a lot of people on the north side who wish they would have been heard on the Labor Standards Board, and my colleagues would have listened to them and supported that. Like, it seems like this is going to be supported today.
Okay. Any other discussion on consent agenda? All right, seeing none, I'll move approval of items 2 through 11, including postponing item 11 to January 23rd. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay.
Nay on 11.
The ayes have it. Those items are approved. Next, we'll take up the public hearing item. It's a passage of an ordinance related to the gas franchise extension. Here to introduce this item is Jocelyn Bremer from the City Attorney's Office. Welcome, Attorney Bremer.
Thank you very much, Chair Cashman, members of the committee. My name is Jocelyn Bremer, and I'm here to request that this committee pass the request for the extension of the current gas franchise ordinance, which is set forth in Appendix C1 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances. The parties, the city and Centerpoint continue to negotiate the franchise agreement, and which is currently set to expire at the end of this year. There's not time to get the franchise agreement through the legislative process before the end of this year, and therefore we're asking for that extension to April, which will align it with the XL franchise extension that that council granted earlier this fall. And I stand
Great.
for any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions before we open the public hearing? All right. Thank you. Sounds great. I'll now open the public hearing on this extension to the gas franchise ordinance. Is there anyone wishing to speak? We don't have anyone signed up, so if you are here to speak on this item, you can come up now. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I will move approval of this item. Thank you, Attorney Bremer, for all your work on this so far, and look forward to seeing, the final version coming forward in the next couple weeks and months. So thanks. Any other comments or questions on this? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. Our next item is a presentation from our Deputy Commissioner Patrick Hanlon from the Health Department on the update on the Climate Legacy Initiative, Q3 update. Welcome.
Hello, Chair Cashman, council members. My name is Patrick Hanlon. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Sustainability, Healthy Homes, and Environment. This is an update on the Climate Legacy Initiative. As a reminder, in July of 2023, we passed the Climate Equity Plan as a city, and the cornerstone of that plan is really this chart on the right here. It's how do we hit greenhouse gas emission targets that are science-based. This is the story that's going on in cities across the country. And if you look at the next 5 years, we're going to need some very aggressive actions in order to hit these aggressive targets and ambitious targets. And the first step in hitting those targets was the Climate Legacy Initiative. And this is the breakdown of the funding distribution. It's $10 million a year annually to these different sectors, to pathways and workforce, climate incentives, policy coordination and outreach, urban forestry, carbon sequestration, homegrown, circular economy, charging infrastructure, and then, of course, the administration to help make all of those programs happen. And to give a funding status, and this is the same as my understanding in talking to partners in Public Works, CPED, IGR, and others, is that we are fully allocated with the budget in 2024. In fact, in the health department, we're over allocated, and the reason for that, or over encumbered, is that with the Green Cost Share program, we know that 80 to 90% of our funding comes in November and December, and we know that projects drop out for a variety of reasons or push into the next year, and so we over allocate for that reason intentionally. CPED employment and training is the first category, and I have the names of all the folks involved. There were, of course, folks that were hired under the Climate Legacy Initiative, but there's also a lot of people that took on additional workload to make all of these programs happen. So try to include as best I could their names. There's a lot of folks across the city enterprise that were involved in getting these 43 different tactics involved with the Climate Legacy Initiative off the ground. Minneapolis workforce training, they focus on green jobs with an emphasis on equity, provide pathways for BIPOC communities in climate sectors, and support sustainability and resiliency in our workforce. And their outcomes with their apprenticeship outreach, they've engaged 400 residents so far with their program. And they had to go through kicking this entire program off from the start of the year, so really impressive that they got these results. Engaged with 50 folks in navigation and counseling services, and were able to place 40 people into apprenticeship programs. And then equally as impressive is they're able to get 100% retention support for the folks that are in those positions for them to be retained. Next up is the Green Careers Program. It's a supportive program to the CPED workforce program. That's the team involved with Green Careers. Green Careers provides exposure to young adults and youth in energy efficiency, renewable energy, pollution prevention, and other green fields. They provide general education, exposure to these career pathways, and then provide accredited training so those students have tools in their tool belt when they walk out of the trainings in terms of for their careers. And then they're one of the triage points for our CPED workforce programs. And these are the different partners that are involved. In fact, I just had a great conversation with Anthony Taylor at the back of the room talking about Melanin in Motion. These are all the different partners. So when we talk about the results of this program and all the programs that I'm about to mention, it really involves a lot of community partners across the city to get all of these results and to make this work happen. Green Careers, they had 36 different training programs that they offered. We're able to get to 400, close to 500 students, probably will by the end of the year. And then one thing to really highlight is the 69% BIPOC folks in the trainings, and 100% of those folks were in environmental justice communities. That really just shows that when we're intentional with our programming and getting it out to the folks that we want to serve, that we're able to do that. And those that 69% really outperforms the demographics of the city of Minneapolis, showing that they're very intentional with their programs and how they're reaching people. Homegrown Minneapolis, Allison Babb and her team focus on sustainable growing, extending the growing season, making sure that we have waste prevention programs. Again, prioritizing racial equity as with this program and all of our programs. And they were first out of the gate. These are the different partners that they worked with Homegrown in this, like I said, this program was the first out of the gate with the Climate Legacy Initiative, working with urban farmers and gardeners. We'll be working on greenhouse gas emission numbers off of those 16 projects. Again, 100% of those projects are in environmental justice communities, North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis. And so we'll be reporting back on what that Venn diagram on climate greenhouse gas emission numbers are. Next up is our large building greenhouse gas reduction. This is the team involved with that. Highlighting the top person there, Izzy Ballet. She was one of the hires under the Climate Legacy Initiative as our building hub coordinator. Doing needs assessments. When you look at the top largest 800 buildings, that's buildings that are over 50,000 square feet in Minneapolis, they represent nearly half of our greenhouse gas emissions from our built environment. So it's an incredibly important sector for us to focus on to get greenhouse gas reductions. And especially when you look at the lowest 25% performing buildings. And here's some examples. We had a large greenhouse gas reduction RFP that went out for the first time this year. That's a $500,000 match. And these are the projects that came back with that program. Metalmatic, one of the largest therm reduction projects in Minneapolis. In fact, if you look at the natural gas reduction from that one project, it's more than all of our natural gas reductions over the last 10 years with the Green Cost Share program. Really impressive projects with that. Our Minneapolis Public Schools, a renewable energy and energy efficiency project. I was just talking to Hillcrest Development about one of the largest solar arrays in Minneapolis. That one is still on the table to get done. And then Avivo Housing, of course, providing services for people, homeless population, and that allows for the agency to save a lot of money and provide additional comfort for folks in that organization. The large building greenhouse gas reduction. So we've done 176 audits with these buildings. That provides us with a lot of information to go out and do intentional outreach. And we've leveraged $4 million of investments, and it's equivalent to the reductions that we've got with this program are equivalent to 410 homes being net zero. And to give you an example, that would be like driving 10 blocks in Minneapolis and houses on both sides of the street in those blocks all being net zero. So these are incredibly large reductions that we're getting off of these small number of projects. The Green Cost Share program, that's the team involved. I put an asterisk next to Isaac Evans because we've been able to support that position through ARPA funding for the last 3 years, and his position will be part of the 2025 budget ask. These two together manage over 300 contracts on 500 different properties, and I would really put that number up against any team in the city of Minneapolis in terms of the workload that they're taking on to get these projects done. The Green Cost Share program has incentives for solar, energy efficiency, air pollution reduction. The major initiatives that they rolled out this year are 0% financing for folks in residential situations, triple pane windows. We're the only city I know of that is offering incentives for windows that has an overlap with our lead poisoning programs, childhood lead poisoning programs. We do low-income LEAR program that is incentives for folks in rental situations, being very targeted towards getting energy savings for people that are renting, working with organizations like Community Land Trust, Habitat for Humanity, and like I mentioned, the large greenhouse gas reduction projects. The Green Cost Share program focuses on not only greenhouse gas reduction, but also on equity. We have 412 projects that are lined up to be completed this year. Over 1,800 low-income properties are being served, or households are being served, and 60% of the projects are environmental justice projects. And we use the White House Justice 40 standard on investing in environmental justice communities. That is 40% of funding goes to environmental justice. To us, that's the low bar. They set that as a goal. That's the city of Minneapolis' low bar. We try to be above that number with all of our programming. This is an example of the spectrum of projects that we've worked on. So 0% loan program in this house on the left, which is low income, doing attic insulation, to large greenhouse gas reduction projects like the Metalmatic Therms project that I mentioned earlier. Healthy homes and weatherization, we should probably have another category of working on deep equity. I think a lot with our previous climate action plan, there was a lot of talk about low-hanging fruit in order to get greenhouse gas reductions. In this approach of a climate equity plan, we work on the hardest properties to move first. And so this is an example of that. This is an owner-occupied house at below 30% area median income in North Minneapolis. They called for a no-heat situation. We were able to come in and address multiple health and safety issues in this home, replaced an octopus boiler that had asbestos in it. But we provided insulation for walls, attics, addressed ventilation, air quality issues in the home. We were able to repair this plumbing issues that were in the house, integrated pest management, and then lead paint remediation at the same time. This is an example of how we're moving in an equity-first approach. And this is a score of that household in terms of it compared to the rest of the neighbors in that area. As you can see, they're 25%, and a lot of the houses are up in that 10%, near 100 range in the neighborhood. So we've only done, again, small number of homes, but very important, very hard, people in very difficult situations. Every single one of the houses that we work with on this program are below 80% area median income, and 91% of the folks are BIPOC residents, Black, Indigenous, or people of color. The biochar carbon sequestration program, this is that team. And as a reminder, biochar is a wood waste soil amendment created through pyrolysis. It improves poor urban soils for nutrients and resilience. It sequesters carbon for over 1,000 years as a side benefit of it. And this program is the only carbon negative project that we have in Minneapolis. So in order for us to hit our greenhouse gas targets, we need to have carbon negative projects. And currently this is our only strategy in this area. These are our partners, and a big shout out to the Shakopee, Metawakan, and Sioux community who has been an excellent partner on this. Also Excel and our own enterprise partners, Public Works. The project path for next year, this is the production site, so that is the actual plan drawings at 670 25th Avenue Southeast. We've purchased a pyrolysis unit. If you want to head out to Connecticut and go visit it, it is there in storage right now, and we're waiting for site development on the site. We've been a big thank you to CPED, Public Works, and Property Services for helping us move this project along. We're looking at construction completion in spring of 2025 and production in summer of 2025. We're also lining up our Puro carbon registry through it's a European carbon credit system. Carbon sequestration from what we're expecting with the program is 500 tons of biochar production a year. That is about 1,500 tons of CO2 emission avoided, and that's the equivalent of taking 215 cars off the road. And of course, you add this up with all of the other programs, we're getting to pretty significant greenhouse gas reductions with all of these different programs. Our city tree program with Sydney Schaff and her team. These are all the different services that they provide, low-cost residential tree sales for residents, resident pickup. We also do plantings at businesses, and we've also shifted our mindset to more of an equity mindset with this program as well, and we're doing more plantings, going out and doing plantings in North Minneapolis and South Minneapolis, holding community tree workshops and doing much more engagement. There's some examples of some of the partners that we work with on the city tree program. We've planted just almost over twice the number of trees that we planted last year. We have a number of great community partnerships, and we have a full team on board. And I'd just like to remind you that we also have an $8 million USDA grant that we have that's helping people who are dealing with the stresses of ash trees coming down and the financial burden of ash trees coming down on their property. So this team is also addressing that issue. And I don't think I need to talk with you all about the benefits of trees, but there on the right is all the benefits that it provides on top of the climate benefits that it brings to us. EV charging and infrastructure, John Lundstrom has been a great hire with Public Works. It's really exciting to hear all the things that he's rolling out. The EV Spot Network and EV Car Share launched in 2022. It was a partnership with Bloomberg Philanthropies, the American Cities Climate Challenge, bringing all of these partners together. And it's really laid the groundwork for hiring his position, having the curbside EV readiness completed in 2024. Through the Climate Legacy Initiative, we were able to get 17 dual port chargers for municipal ramps. And then they're also looking at using that funding to leverage more grant funding. Director Sexton, jump in anytime you want on any of this. But yeah, they're rolling out, especially again and again, I'll keep mentioning it, in areas of equity, rolling out these EV charging networks in North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, and other identified areas of equity. The outcomes of the program is over 105,000 trips have been taken with the EV car share model. And again, 90% of it is taking place in areas of climate equity. And then the CO2 emissions is equivalent to taking 510 homes and making them net zero. There was another piece on there about there's also a lot of economic benefits to all of this work. There was $7.8 million in savings for transportation costs from all of that work as well. Intergovernment relations, these folks are pulling together our Inflation Reduction Act, IIJA funding. I'm not going to read through all the details on these slides, but they're there in the report. They've had $187,000 in tax credits already and are lining up other projects with partners in CPED, Fire, Property Services, the Health Department, and Public Works. Outreach and community engagement. This is Alice Freilich is doing a great job. When manager Kim Havey left, this was the piece that he was working on. So we had a little bit of delay in pulling all of these contracts together, and she's done a great job of the transition and getting our neighborhood and community groups back involved. with this work. So these are examples, all of the partners that we're working with through that work. Outreach and community engagement, so there's 9 neighborhood organizations that we're working with, and I'll repeat it again, 100% of those are in environmental justice communities, and we're working with community groups as well on a resilience hubs with the American Indian Center, Sabathani, and 1200 Plymouth Renewable Energy Partners in North Minneapolis, and looking at leveraging grants for our resilience hub strategies and work. Communications and marketing, our communications team, this is one thing that's really unique about the Climate Legacy Initiative and has proven to be really effective, is not only doing government outreach, but having an actual marketing firm come in and pull together branding, have social posts, have putting together toolkits for some of those community partners that I just talked about, so they have the resources when they go out and talk to people, and that we're all on the same page when we talk about messaging. And this is some of the branding that they've come up with, and it was interesting when they'd go out and come back from their focus groups, they definitely talk about programming in ways that resonate better with people than maybe we do sometimes speaking with a government lens and a program lens. This is some of the marketing metrics that that we had early on in our 2 campaigns. These are multiple campaigns in both of these areas, but 11,000 clicks on our website for the tree program and 36,000 clicks on our website for the green cost share program. That far exceeds any kind of results that we were getting in previous efforts through the past 10 years of both of those programs. They're also assisting in telling the story of our work. So here's 2 videos that are on here. You can click on the link in the report to see all the different videos and all the stories. That's one thing that we struggle as we do hundreds and into thousands of projects, is really telling the story of what's going on in Minneapolis right now, because there's a lot of positive and impressive stories that people are doing around the city. So looking ahead to 2025, overcoming the challenges that we've had, we knew that we'd have some challenges, and one of the ones right off the bat, one of the challenges off the bat was Center for Energy and Environment ran out of capital very early in the year. We ran through, because of the success of our outreach programs, so we are meeting with them and coming up with financial capital to ensure that as soon as we start in January that we can run a whole year, and making sure we're really targeted again in those environmental justice communities so that the folks that need the loans have those loans available. Block by block contracts and implementation are in place. The contracts are in place for both outreach and implementation. And then biochar production costs were one of the surprises that we had, so we actually went back to the drawing table, and that's why we have a delay in the biochar program, is because the cost came in particularly high, and we've been working with our consultant, with Public Works, with Property Services to see what we can do to cut down costs, and then in the next few weeks, we'll be re-sending out that RFP for the biochar program. Director of Climate Equity Action, Megan Hoy, is in the back of the room here. She has also hit the ground running, being hired here in August, and she's working with project manager Jess Stone and really focusing on our enterprise, so meeting with Reg Services, with CPED, around these different categories of housing, city buildings, EV charging infrastructure, and then making sure that we're, as an enterprise, we're rolling out these programs and really organized and collaborating in how we roll out this work. 2 data positions to build dashboards for a framework so that you can have some interactive ways of, when I talk about the results of this work, that we can make some of those results available to you, and you can have an interactive way of looking at the data and asking questions about the work that's going on. The addition of zero waste strategies is coming up in 2025 because of the Venn diagram between zero waste and climate. And then I think we're much better positioned to hit the ground running in January of this year because of all the people that we now have in place and the contracts that we have in place for 2025. So this is how I left the last update that we had in March. This is kind of as we look at those really aggressive strategies that we need to have as a city on greenhouse gas reduction. And this is just, I want to leave you with this reminder. It's easy to look at like the green cost share program and say, well, we've only done 510 projects and we need to hit really ambitious targets. But I just want to remind us that this was us last year. That's how many projects that we had going on in Minneapolis through the Green Cost Share program, and that's probably the same across all of these different programs if they existed at all. And then if you look back at the last few years, this is where what we were able to do under ARPA funding and our first round of the franchise fee increase. And then if you look before that, that's where we were. And so if you want to talk about the need to scale and the trajectory and the momentum that we have right now, I just wanted to leave you with this graph, and then I'll stand for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you for the presentation. I'm sure a lot of colleagues have questions, and I have some as well, and I'll pass it first to Vice Chair Koski.
Thank you, Chair Cashman. Thank you, Director, for being here, and thank you for the presentation. Tons of information.
Yes.
You sped right through that, and it's been highly anticipated by individuals in my ward to see this presentation, so really grateful to have it, and the visuals in this way too, especially this last slide. So I do have a couple questions, and I'll actually just mount off this slide here.
Great.
You know, we have a lot of organizations and groups that want us to scale more and more and more. And so I think this shows exactly, you know, how effectively and you've been able to use that $10 million. But I know that people want to know, what does it look like for us to have $20 million, $30 million, $100 million? And we've been talking to individuals and saying that we've got to get these programs up off the ground. We have to understand the data and get some kinks out. And so I'm just curious to understand from your perspective, how we continue to scale. What does that look like for you, and what's that funding source and need balanced with the capacity and ability to get this out in as efficiently and effectively as you did in the first year?
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Koski. I hesitate, and usually I'm like, the more money we can get, the better. But I think it was really wise, the approach that we took in having the $10 million and really having some programs where we could get programming off the ground. I think we did run into a lot of challenges and hurdles this first year. And like I mentioned, with the 0% financing, going back to the table and figuring out what that program looks like. And there was a number of challenges that I'm not mentioning here that we ran into. And I think it would be good to at least have another year of going through and really getting all of our programming streamlined. Megan Hoy and Jess Stone, who I mentioned, are really putting together and really streamlining our approach and our messaging and having an enterprise-wide approach. Director Sexton is also leading up that charge with the enterprise. So I think it would be good for us to at least get the first part of the year before having those conversations. I think we were really wise in the way that we rolled out this program. There's been a number of cities that just went too big, too fast, and paid the price. And I think we're doing it in a wise way.
Great, that's really helpful to understand. And then just other couple follow-up questions. I was just curious to know, both for the green careers, you talked about 488 jobs, I believe,
Students.
Students,
yes,
sorry,
yep.
Students. And then weatherization, for example, you did 37. Could you just tell me what were the goals that you had set out to do? I think that was one thing, and really kind of throughout it, I'd be curious to know, was your goal to have, close to 500 youth trained, or was it 700 youth and we didn't hit that mark? Or, just kind of curious, because these are impressive numbers, but also curious to know, I know that you were dreaming big here, but
Yes,
curious
yeah.
to know where we hit. And then with that weatherization number, you were the one who commented and said, I know it doesn't feel like a big number, but it's a lot to do. And I think digging into that a little bit more would be helpful, because yes, 37 compared to some of the other numbers that we saw, but the impact of that I think is huge, and just curious what those goals were and if we've
Sure.
met those.
Sure. Chair Cashman, Councilmember Koski. In terms of that residential one, that 37 was really the deep energy retrofits that we did. We did have, I think it was over 250 homes that we worked with on residential. We're still getting homes in. We have a campaign that's going out right now. So I don't think we entirely know where we're ending up with all of our numbers. I think we did have a little bit of in talking about equity, like with our tree program, I think we set the number a little bit higher. And as we were going through, we noticed that we weren't hitting the demographic. We weren't getting at that equity approach. And so we shifted our our work to do more plantings and to do, so it maybe costs more, but we're doing it with more of an equity approach. So I think there was some shift in the goals, and I apologize I don't have all of them in front of me. I'm hoping we'll be close with the residential numbers. I think with some of the workforce trainings, we're right around, between us and CPED, we're right around the numbers that we had set out originally. So I think we're seeing some shift in the original goals that we set, but I think we're in the ballpark, and especially as we go into next year. I mean, I think that's where we really set those numbers, is what could these programs do? What's the capacity of these programs? So again, I think it's going to take going into 2025 to really say, okay, now the contracts are in place, the people are in place, what kind of outcomes can we get?
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Vice Chair, would you like to ask for an administrative follow-up on what the metrics were for those?
Sure, I think what would be helpful is understanding what your goals were for 2024, and then what are the goals that you're setting for yourself for 2025 for all of the projects and programs.
So we can do
Yeah,
that.
that'd be great. And I just, we have the climate equity plan also has like different goals. And so if at all possible to relate them to the goals there. And I know that you're doing updates, you're doing biannual updates to this committee on the Climate Legacy Initiative, but it'd be great to have a cadence of updates on the climate equity plan too, the way that Public Works does with the Transportation Action Plan, right? So these are like the foundational document that we're reaching towards, and it has some different goals, I think, than just these metrics, right?
Yeah, Chair Cashman, Director Megan Hoy, that is the work that she is doing right now, is laying out the entire climate equity plan and relating, it's building the scaffolding between this first step that we've taken, building that first step of building the scaffolding between the first step and that climate equity plan. So that is definitely our plan, and when we come back with updates, we can start relating those targets as far apart in the beginning as they're probably going to seem.
Great.
Thank you.
And then clerks, did you capture the question? Okay. Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Cashman, and thank you, Director Hanlon, for your presentation, and just honestly, just thank you to the whole team that's a part of implementing the Climate Legacy Initiative. This presentation was just very striking. I didn't expect to feel so emotional about it today in committee. It just really caught me off guard. I think, I'm going to try to keep it together. We all know climate change is extremely scary, and we see the impacts of it growing every single year in our nation, throughout the world, and it's just very powerful to see that investments that we can make, even before any of us were on this council, like investments, plans, can lead to actual tangible changes. And I'm just very proud to see all of this work just within 1 year and the impacts that's making within our community. And I know we should pat ourselves on the back for a year of work. Your team should. I think the thing that's really profound is, even as we're saying this is all the great work that's been done, we're saying there needs to be more that can be done. We're not done putting pressure on this. We're not done asking more for more funding. We're not done with engaging. We're not done with thinking about other creative solutions. So just thank you to the whole team in the city of Minneapolis that just put so much time and effort in getting this up and being such great problem solvers. The numbers itself just speak for itself in each program. And I guess the first question that I'll ask is, could you just share the number of staff members that are working to get the Climate Legacy Initiative implemented?
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Chowdhury, there's 40-some staff involved in both, in all of just my divisions, but that's not, there's a number of staff in Public Works, in CPED, intergovernment relations, a number of people across the enterprise, property services, OPS. There's just so many people that have been involved with this. And to your point, they're all stepping up. People are taking on this additional workload really without question, and really stepping up because they understand the cause.
Wonderful. And one of the things that really I was struck by was the number of individuals in our community that were engaged with around creating jobs, workforce development, and a part of this just transition and thinking about bringing in BIPOC community members, environmental justice impacted communities into what we're doing as a city, like real investment into the community. I was wondering if you could kind of share with the 400 residents that we're engaged with, the 40 people who are placed with apprenticeship, one, like, what types of apprenticeships were they placed into? And then what's the goal for next year in terms of how many folks do we want to engage with and bring into these types of apprenticeships?
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Chowdhury, I'm hearing another follow-up
Okay, great.
for us to come back to you with some more details around that program. And really, all of these programs, we could go into a half an hour long presentation of the program. So yeah, we'll come back to you with that, please.
Okay, wonderful. I think one of my New Year's resolutions is to engage more deeply with you and your team on the Climate Legacy Initiative and just learn more and see how much this committee can support its implementation and just get a better understanding of it in general. The next question that I have is one, because I didn't fully understand it. I saw it and I was just like, okay, this sounds really cool. I was struck by it. You had a slide after the carbon sequestration around pyrolysis. Could you explain what that is and that machine in Connecticut?
Yes.
Can you just
yeah.
go a little bit more into detail?
Yeah, thank you. I've been talking about this so long, I'm never sure. Chair Cashman, Councilmember Chowdhury. So pyrolysis is taking wood waste, heating it up to 700 degrees Celsius, and when you do that, you create a product called biochar, which keeps the carbon structure of the wood in place. It's broken up, and we mix it with compost with the Metawakan and Sioux community, and then we send it out to urban gardeners, and it increases the soil productivity by between 10 and 30%, depending on what they're planting, but it's a way to improve urban soils. And then a side benefit of that soil amendment is it sequesters carbon for 1,000 years from that wood waste.
Okay, so pyrolysis is the process to
Correct.
get biochar. Okay, that makes sense. And then are we trying to bring that machine over to Minneapolis? Yes.
Chair Cashman, yes. Councilmember Chowdhury,
What's
yes.
the
We'll
goal on
we'll be producing biochar, and we'll be able to get, I mentioned a carbon registry, we'll be able to get carbon credits for the biochar that we're producing and putting into place. And then there will also be cost recovery in terms of being able to sell that. Our plan is to be able to use it in environmental justice communities for urban gardeners and urban farmers, likely for free, but there'll be other ways to be able to sell that and for a cost recovery, like to other government partners on roadways, state partners, to be able to use it in their projects.
Wonderful. Do we have a timeline on when we'll have that over here?
Yeah, so Chair Cashman, Councilmember Chowdhury, we're looking at spring of 2025 for having the site development in place and then getting production. We assume there's going to be some lag in there, and then in the summer of 2025 to go into production.
Awesome. That's great. And then that was one of the tools, one of the only tools we have for carbon negative strategies. Are there other strategies that we're looking at or considering at this point?
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Chowdhury, yes, there are other carbon sequestration strategies. In fact, we're working with Centerpoint on some different pilot projects with heating. There's a number of different technologies that are coming out around carbon sequestration. So yes, we're looking at that trend and how Minneapolis can take advantage of it.
Awesome. Yeah, that will definitely be something I'm interested in following up on and just learning more with you and your team. And then the last thing I'll ask about is a building hub coordinator. And that position and that the individual who works with it, they work with 800 buildings. Is that the role is? Could you describe more in detail what that singular role does? Because I was just floored by the amount of work that was done within that one position and what they're tasked to do. So,
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Chowdhury, yeah, it's a whole team that's working on our energy benchmarking program, and that position is really focused on doing intentional outreach with those building owners. They're doing it in a prioritized way, so we look at kind of the low-performing buildings first. There's around 176 that we have reports on right now, so really focusing in that sector first and eating that elephant one bite at a time, but yes.
Awesome. Well, those are my questions. Thank you, and just really hats off to your team.
Thanks, Councilmember Chowdhury. I did want to follow up on Vice Chair Koski's question, which was, why we have 10 million this year, that's great, and next year's 10 million, but what's the trajectory after that? Because I'm guessing we're already planning for 26-7 up to 2030. What's the trajectory and growth in the amount in the CLI?
Yeah, Chair Cashman. I think we're looking at what the results are of this effort to try to think about what that next step looks like. And Director Sexton is part of that conversation. Our new Director of Climate Equity Action will be part of that, and hopefully we'll all of us will be part of that conversation and what that looks like going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a set number right now.
Okay. I know that the community I can speak for is hoping to get up to $100 million annual in the CLI. And just based on some of the data we have on how much it does cost to weatherize all homes in the billions of dollars, that's the goal that I hear in community, and also a goal that I support. Did you want to add something to that, Vice Chair?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Cashman. I just wanted to add to that. When you first were bringing this forward to us, I thought you did an excellent job of helping us understand the return on our investment. And so I think even when we get the information back about the goals, and right now what we know what this is costing, and when individuals look at their line item on their Excel or energy bill, they see about $1. But one thing you did highlight here was what the return was. I think I saw $300 to $600 savings for the weatherization per household per year, in return of probably $1 or so a month. And so I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, so I just think that highlighting that and helping us understand as we grow potentially this program, what that return on our investment looks like, and how efficient and effective you've been able to work, and what that looks like for us, us as residents, but specifically homeowners and renters as well. So, thank you.
Great. And then I just wanted to ask a couple of status updates on a couple of the contracts, because I know we approved the SRF Consulting Group to do Climate Legacy Initiative implementation. What's the update on their work?
Chair Cashman, thank you for asking that. In fact, it was on one of the slides, but I didn't run through it. So that contract is in place, and they're putting together what those. So the point of that group was to advise us. So that'll be another part of the conversation, like you mentioned, about what do programs look like going forward, and it's trying as much as possible to make use of existing groups that we brought together instead of creating another advisory group. But to use the Northside Green Zone, Southside Green Zone, our CAC group, the Environmental Advisory Committee, and the other committees that we have here in the city. So using that consulting group to pull together those advisory groups and give us some advice on what they're seeing with some of the more detailed outcomes of the Climate Legacy Initiative. So that contract's in place, and looking to start that up in January.
Oh, they'll start the work in January?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second one was the block-by-block contracts for both outreach and implementation. Who are those contracts with, and for how much?
Chair Cashman, so the implementation group is Cooperative Energy Futures, and then one of the outreach groups is Unidos, and along with all of our other community partners and stakeholder partners in doing the outreach. And that's part of making sure we're getting our messaging correct, is so that we don't have a number of different groups going out and giving all sorts of different messages on things, and to make sure that we have our, including our own 311, so when people call in and they want to ask about, what do these programs look like? So that's part of the conversation that's going on right now. We have the contracts in place with a number of those groups, and they're really outcome-based contracts, and then working with Cooperative Energy Futures, they're looking at lining up some of the grant dollars that they have and getting their program set up. So with both Cooperative Energy Futures and Unidos, They're looking at getting started in the spring, and that is at their request because they want to get their programs lined up and make sure that they're organized in going out.
Sure, sure. And then what's the dollar amount on those contracts?
I can, Chair Cashman, I can get back to you with the exact dollar amounts on those.
Okay,
There's-
and then for 2024 as well as 2025?
We can do that.
Okay, thank you. I'll make sure Kendall caught that one.
Madam Chair, could you repeat that one more
Okay,
time?
so the question is, how much are the contracts for the block by block, both outreach and implementation groups that are funded in 2024, as well as the plan for 2025? Okay, and then I just lastly wanted to ask about the homegrown MPLS, this 2025 plan to develop permanent community garden space with year-round community hoop houses. Is that new for 2025, or is that already happening this year at all?
I will have to get back to you on that one. That's under Allison Babb and Homegrown, and I don't know the current status of that.
Okay, maybe
Yeah.
we could just add that one to the memo.
Yeah.
She can jump in and provide that answer to you as well through the same memo. It'd be great to know if the year-round community hoop houses are already up and running this year. I think that's a plan for next year, but just want to confirm, and then which areas and which community gardens. I ask because I have a lot of community gardens in my ward, and I think they're doing great work, and just want to make sure that they're connecting and able to access all the homegrown resources that are available.
Great.
Any other questions? All right, seeing no one else, thank you so much for the status update. Great work, everyone, and thanks to your whole team. So I'll ask the
Thank you.
clerk to file that report. Our final item today is the concept layout for 38th Street and Chicago Avenue, George Floyd Square, and I'll just pass it to Director Sexton to introduce this item.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Cashman. I just wanted, before Nathan comes up here today, I just wanted to clarify kind of why we're here and the goal, which is really to seek approval for the concept layout for the intersection of 38 and Chicago that includes George Floyd Square. We're bringing this here today with the goal to move forward so that we could begin construction in 2025. We think that's possible if we get approval this council cycle, which is important because that would give us the best chance to complete this work in 2026. After which plans and investments in arts, memorials, the People's Way that are still in development with community could be implemented. Delays in the layout approval could extend the completion date until 2028 or later, which would also push out realization of the full community vision until sometime after that. So Nathan's here today. Nathan Koster is here today. He's been part of this work, engaging with community to understand their values and priorities that we used to guide and evaluate the different concepts that we brought out to the community and use that to get us to the final recommendation that we're presenting today for the concept layout. So Nathan's going to provide more information about how we got there and how we use that information. But again, I just want to reinforce why we're coming here today and the importance that we see in a council approval this cycle. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the introduction and welcome, Nathan.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nathan Koster, Supervisor, Transportation Planner in Public Works. Today, I'm here to talk about the concept layout approval for 38th Chicago, as well as authorizing the right-of-way agreements. Before I start, I just want to highlight that this builds upon the presentation that we had last week at the Committee of the Whole. And before we even start the presentation, I just want to make sure we're centering back on why we're here. This is such a cultural and worldwide place of significance for the community, and really a site for those who have experienced and continue to experience police brutality. George Floyd was murdered by a former Minneapolis Police Department officer, and the city is still working through the settlement agreements and the consent decree. And these are all very critical items that, as we as staff work through this project and work with the community, especially a lot of people in the community who have shared decades of police tension and interactions, and those are things that we really think about as this is more than just a street project. So I just really want to make sure the council knows that a lot of us staff who've been working on this really think about this as something much bigger, and it's more than just the street project in front of us here today. So today's presentation will focus more on the work that we have done in 2024, but also doing a little bit of a look back at the last 3+ years of work that we have done with the community. And while I'm here presenting for Public Works, I really wouldn't be here without the support of other colleagues in the Office of Public Service, Community Planning, Economic Development, Arts and Cultural Affairs, Health, Race, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging, Neighborhood, Community Relations, the Communications Department, and all my peers in Public Works. It's really a team effort, and it's not one singular person. And I believe we've all really helped each other grow and really do this community engagement in a meaningful and intentional way. So thinking about what we did with the visioning and priorities work in 2024, this built upon what the city had proposed at Committee of the Whole in October of 2023, looking more holistically at visions and values from the community, looking at the People's Way site to define a community-centered owner and the types of uses, as well as coordinating with arts and memorials that would be out there, and developing a cohesive street vision that would interact with all three of those cohesively to really meet the intent of what the community wanted to see. This is an additional summary that we shared at Committee of the Whole last week, talking about the process in which we engaged this year through February through October that we reported last month, of all the types of engagement and activities that we did, visioning workshops, dinner dialogues, focus groups on a monthly basis, a number of intentional events, just continuing to meet with the community. This culminated in 3 values that we continued to work through with community members that centered on repair, honor, and center. And these are really how they permeate. These 3 values permeated every aspect of our work and were something that we worked consistently with the community members to adapt throughout all these sessions to make sure every time we were thinking, like, how does the street, arts, memorial, or engagement center back to these 3 ideas that the community wanted to see. These are even further broke down to 9 priority areas that are then highlighted in the attached report. In the LIMS file, you see an attachment that has the visioning and priorities report. All the areas centered back to how we can have priorities and then specific actions of how we would implement these through all the work plans with community. So now I'll be shifting to the public works focused area with the streets specifically. So thinking back to many years ago now, it feels like in 2019, we were developing the capital improvement program for 2021 through 2026. 38th and Chicago, both streets were identified as capital improvement projects that were finalized to go to our Capital Long Range Improvement Committee, CLIC, in March of 2020. Then there was COVID, then we had the murder of George Floyd, and we had to adapt in many ways and many thinkings about how we're delivering capital projects. And at that time, as we worked through the budget process, that's when we had defined the 38th Chicago Re-Envision project that would focus primarily on 38th from Park to 10th and on Chicago from 37th to 39th. As we've mentioned previously, these streets range from anywhere from 60 to 65 years old, being built in 1958 and 1963. So they're quite old. We know that they have a lot of aging utility and infrastructure underneath the street. Chicago Ave still has old bricks and streetcar tracks underneath them. So we know there's a lot of work to do from the ground up to really rebuild these streets. So when we started that engagement process, we wanted to be very intentional and thoughtful. And that started in 2021 and ultimately culminated in 2023 through multiple phases of engagement. And these range many topics, many well outside of Public Works expertise, but we're very critical in even just starting the conversation and engaging with community members where they're at with still very raw emotions in 2021. So it's being very thoughtful of like just listening and introducing and try to advance that through visioning. But one thing was really clear is while Public Works started first, there was a lot of desire and intent to be more holistic and having a cohesive vision, which is why we took on this work in 2024 to have all aspects of the project. But what I really want to highlight is a lot of this centered on listening to the people. And while there was definitely a desire to go faster, at that time it was, we needed to slow down and have the cohesive vision and have conversations about all aspects, which is why we really centered the work plan in 2024 on making sure all of those elements, the People's Way, the arts, memorials, and streets came together as a complete vision. This slide is meant to demonstrate just the volume of activities that we conducted over 2021 to 2023. We're really grateful to have a really good team of BIPOC consultants who helped us with this work. I'd really like to thank a lot of the work that Formula, Public Policy Project, NAO Partners, and TC2 did in helping with a really thoughtful engagement plan. A lot of this coincided with multiple events on a monthly basis for approximately 2-ish years. That really focused on setting up monthly learning tables across many social, infrastructure, policy type topics. We did a series of 3 open houses, a number of pop-up events in the community, so it was easier to do outreach, especially since we were in that middle part of COVID that made it very unique and challenging to do community engagement, but we thought of very creative ways. And then we did a lot of focus groups, as well as setting up what we called at the time a co-creation team with community stakeholders to work more directly with the Public Works and the city team to start advancing ideas, concepts, and priorities. 2 key things that really did come out of there is making sure we were intentional about how meeting with direct neighbors. And some of the recommendations they came up with is setting up block group meetings so every block face within the 4-block radius would have their own specific chance opportunity to talk directly with staff. The other one was setting up a community survey that they wanted to take on independently, making sure that they could start framing up questions that help guide and inform both city and community on what the square wanted to look like. So as a part of that, the community co-creation team partnered with the University of Minnesota Center of Urban and Regional Affairs, some of you know that as CURA, to develop an online and digital survey, as well as supplementing that with neighborhood canvassing, and that took place in November and December of 2023. And as I said, that was really meant to guide decision-making and have a more robust data set. The city was not involved in the development of the questions, but we did provide support because we do have access to translation services and had the ability to print postcards at scale to make sure that they got to all the residents and property owners within the entireties of Ward 8 and Ward 9. And if I recall correctly, it was over 30,000 postcards that we helped get mailed out to really increase awareness of the survey. There was approximately 6,000 responses that CURA got to the survey that they processed and summarized. The survey did get distributed to a third party, and there was concern about skewing of the results around December 4th or 5th of last year. So CURA did provide a supplemental subset of that responses because of the results were skewed. So they have results processed prior to that time because there was definitely concerns in the community of like how that may have been shared through a different group that may not have necessarily reflected the neighborhood. So I did attach the summary that CURA shared. It was published in May. We at the city got that in October, so we got that more recently. And the subset of results for everything prior to December 4th, there were still about 1,700 to 2,000 responses, which is still a very big, robust data set. And we just have the raw data that we were able to provide. There was no processing or evaluation of that. We just took the results, and what I summarized in 2 bullets very succinctly was most of the responses either fell in 2 buckets. The most common responses is most strongly supported full vehicular access, and at the flip side, like the other data point was the strong opposition to restricted access. So like that's the extremes. There was definitely a little bit of a bell curve, but that is where most of the results came in. So when we looked at the results that CURA provided, it is most providing full transportation access had the most support, and restrictions, especially the pedestrian only, had the least support. So as we wrapped up our work with the Public Works centered work from 21 to 23, all that data we brought forward, all the information, because there was a lot of concern of you're just going to start another phase of the project. What's going to happen to all the input? We made sure that all that got carried forward and was a part of our starting point in 2024. So when we took all those themes from the community engagement that we did from 2021 to 2023, we looked at where those themes were, what ideas that people shared with us, because we did a lot of like exercises where they drew the street themselves, whether through puzzle activities that we created, they drew up their own concepts in the street. We brought those all forward, and on the screen you'll see three main ideas: a closed access, a limited access, and an open access. And that really formed the starting place of where we started the work in 2024 and wanted to build upon. So as we think of like taking just those drawings from the community and translate those into concept development, we're looking at what were the design goals, what did the community tell us, and what are some of the principles that the community wanted to see. So this is where we're taking what are the plans and policies tell us, what does the community engagement tell us, and then what are the frameworks that we have from legal, whether it's policies, ordinance, state law, what have you. And we tried to bring those all together into the four legs of the intersection. So on the screen, you'll kind of see A, which is everything from the 3700 block, which is from 37th to 38th on Chicago, and then 38th to 39th on Chicago, and then on 38th from Park to 10th. And this is where we took the ideas from the community and started drawing them up. And I said, this is where we're looking at how are we meeting our stormwater ordinance? What's our street design say? How do we integrate racial equity framework for transportation? The climate action plan, as we talked about before, and then elements of the 38th Thrive plan. So we're bringing together all of these plans and policies, as well as the update to the state statute for pedestrian malls, which I'll cover in a future slide. So as we brought these together, this really formed the canvas that we wanted people to start giving us input on. And we shared these initial concepts in July. Where on the previous slide, I showed all three legs. A lot of the differences were primarily in the 3700 block, where the biggest differences wanted to be as far as how that block looked, functioned, and how it's being actively used by the community. So those three concepts are just given names to make it sure it was easier to do engagement as we referred to them. So the first one is called Pedestrian Plaza. The second and third, Transit Mall and Flexible. So the Pedestrian Plaza, looking at all the technical aspects of how we would be able to manage access, circulation, and meet the fire code for emergency and service vehicles in the area. There's definitely a desire to do more full, robust closures. But because of some of those limitations that I have an additional slide, we did have it be more of a cul-de-sac that would have more of a bigger plaza closer to the intersection. One of the things that I do want to highlight that we did look at is the city did work with our legislative delegation to get updates to the state statute for the pedestrian mall. But that state statute doesn't come without limitations. So the biggest changes that you'll see in the state statute is it's no longer restricted to the cities of the first class. So it's permissive to all cities, and it's no longer restricted to central business districts. So previously, it would only be the cities of the first class, and you could only do it in central business districts. And that was the biggest limitation that we saw as far as using this, whether it was for this project or any projects, because we have a lot of community interest in doing PED plazas. The other thing that changes, ensuring that there's access for emergency vehicles are not impeded. What does remain is that to establish a pedestrian plaza, it does have to go through an ordinance and a public hearing. And as a part of that public hearing process, there can't be more than 50% objection to a pedestrian mall. So that is a requirement of the public hearing and establishing an ordinance to have a PED mall. So those are just some things to be aware of with the PED mall statute that still remain. So those are things that we did make sure to consider as far as like how we were looking at a PED plaza that could be functional for both the adjacent properties, but also aligning with all the plans and policies. The second concept, we have the transit mall. This was another idea that was brought forth by the community. You'll see that this one is going to primarily focus on transit priority through the area and focusing on access for local residents and businesses, while the flexible option is intended to provide full transportation access, but having a commitment to making sure there's elements of physical infrastructure that would allow it to be flexible, to be closed for events, gatherings, and celebrations. So as we started to evaluate each of the concepts, there was 4 themes that emerged specifically as we looked at the technical work. The first one was access. I have highlighted this a few times in previous slides, but looking where are all the driveways, alleys, intersections, business loading spots. And as I've mentioned before, this area is a little bit more unique because of the density of driveways and curb cuts in order to get access to the existing parking lots, driveways in the area. And that definitely put a lot of challenges on trying to make further closures because a lot of that has to be managed, especially for business access, loading, and deliveries. The second theme that we started to hear a lot about as we shared these designs is that the image you'll see on the screen was from 2020 when there was more full closures that resulted in a lot of traffic displacements on the side street. Whether we were doing the pop-ups or the door knocking this summer to get feedback from residents, that was one of their biggest concerns as they shared as far as if there was more restrictions at the block again is they were very concerned about reckless driving and speeding on the nearby streets. Many of those streets are narrower than typical residential streets. They do have a little bit more parking demand because of some of the higher density uses with apartments in that area. So there's definitely concerns of how that would impact nearby residents and the people who live in the area. The third one is there's just a lot of traffic restrictions in the area. There's a number of one-way streets, 35th, 36th, Park, Portland, as well as a couple dead-end streets, both at the Say Their Names Cemetery and the Stormwater Pond at 37th and Columbus. Phelps Park also blocks Columbus, doesn't go through. We have a pedestrian median at 40th that doesn't allow traffic through. And there's strong desires from people in the neighborhood to also look at what's called the Southside Greenway that we'd be looking at on 10th Ave that may also require additional traffic calming or safety enhancements for a greenway type treatment in that area. Transit was also one of the key themes that we continue to hear in the area. Traffic or detours for transit have been in place since 2020 on Chicago Ave that require the buses to go a few blocks out of the way to go to the stations at 38th and Park for the D line. Because those are one-way paired streets, it does really impact the ability for residents to walk, roll to those stations, which really impacts the walk shed. We've got numbers for Metro Transit. The buses are averaging an additional 5 to 10 minutes of runtime in each direction, and residents are impacted by walks of up to 5 to 10 minutes longer just to get to those stations. We have heard, while we don't have numbers, but anecdotal, a lot of people have had to take Metro mobility or have relied more on rideshare services, had been displaced from using transit because of these restrictions. Wait 1 minute.
Brief pause would be great. Thank you. All right, go ahead.
So as we looked at all of those technical aspects, and I'm realizing I have a typo on the slide, so my apologies. It's flexible, not flexible open, so my apologies. As we looked at all the technical work, the engagements, the plans and policies, we translated this evaluation to a table so we were able to look at how each of these aligns with the priorities that were identified by the community that were summarized by all the value areas. And we showed it meets, partially meets, and does not meet. And as we took these out to, the concepts out to the community pop-ups, the door knocking, and the vision workshops, we started gathering input of how these would work and what people's thoughts and feelings were. A more detailed table with notes of how we got to those evaluations as provided in the attachment. But this is how we started to frame this up in a way that we could show transparency of how we evaluated each of those to arrive at a recommendation. So I'll go into a little bit more detail specifically about the 6 priorities that were summarized and highlight how the recommended concept is addressing each of those areas. So the first area is addressing environmental disparities. And as we're looking at how to remedy the environmental impacts of historical street decisions, we're looking at trying to create more green space, more plantings, more trees. For those who are familiar with this area, there's no boulevards, there's very little greening at all, there's very limited tree canopy in the area. We've worked with the park board forester to confirm that the trees that are out there, many of them are not thriving. There's only just a handful of them. So when we're thinking about very much on the themes of the previous presentation of like how we're looking at climate and long-term impacts, we're wanting to make sure we're adding green space, not just green space, but functional green space that's treating and managing stormwater. The water that goes into this area would go to Lake Hiawatha, so this is our ability to use the streets to treat that water before it discharges into one of our impaired water bodies that we do hear a lot about from community members. And then, as I said, trees. Trees are one of the most important factors of climate and shade in mitigating the impacts of urban heat island. And then lastly, with one of the aging infrastructure we have in the area, is we have a number of lead service lines, and this project would provide the opportunity for the city to come in and replace and upgrade those lead serviced water lines as a cost of the city. I did provide an example of a green infrastructure facility that we built on 38th with the Grand Ave project, and these are the types of things that that the community we have heard the community ask for as a part of this project. Like, those are things that would be very important. The next one would be improving access and reducing barriers to high quality transportation, and really providing those benefits to all the residents, the businesses, and the visitors to really reduce disparities in access. Not only was this a theme that we heard through engagement, but this is also, much like the previous priority I talked about, is things that are central to our racial equity framework for transportation, and how certain communities who are part of those red line communities historically in Minneapolis have not been getting the benefits commensurate with other neighborhoods. So thinking about how this would be mitigated with the design that we're recommending is it would maintain Route 23 service along 38th Street, which we know is extremely critical for residents, as well as it's one of the main routes for students to get to Roosevelt High School. Restoring D-Line and Route 5 service along Chicago through the area with stops close to 38th Street. Providing multiple new all ages and ability bikeways on both 38th and Chicago Ave. And really, when we think about climate and our goals for reducing VMT and mode shift, is providing these the new infrastructure investments that are going to be ADA accessible and that make it more convenient to walk, roll, or take transit, to really prioritize those investments. We've highlighted this before, but the D-Line Route 5 corridor is the busiest bus corridor in the city. 14,000 visitors, or 14,000 riders a day, and thinking about how we make it truly competitive with the automobile and really get people to make it easy to make those choices to move to transit to reduce VMT. Creating welcoming and flexible public spaces for community gatherings and visitors. This has consistently been one of the highest themes of making sure we acknowledge the significance of George Floyd Square as a sacred space for residents and visitors. And central to this is traffic calming, safety, and making sure it is an accessible place. Right now, there's a lot of aspects that do not make it accessible for people who are visiting with wheelchairs, mobility devices in the area, whether they have to be in the street to actually get to some of the memorial aspects, and being able to navigate some of the sidewalks. And part of this is just making sure those spaces are physically separated and protected, much like they are today, but in a manner that's fully accessible. And then making sure we're accommodating closures for those events and celebrations, which I'll highlight in the coming slides. So this is one of the things that we definitely heard as feedback from our last dinner dialogue, as well as feedback from the council is, well, what does that look like? How can that reflect the community? So we did show this at Committee of the Whole last week, but thinking about how other communities are doing this and taking maybe some inspiration that would have to be rooted in ongoing community engagement of how can we create these flexible spaces through barriers, gates, what have you, that reflects the community, that can make this a very flexible space and allow it to have that protection so it can more easily be closed for those types of events. And these are just a number of examples from cities both in the US and Canada who have done this. And there are a couple local examples too. More recently in the top left corner was Chicago Ave, downtown, so a different Chicago Ave. And then the one in Hopkins in the top right corner on their 8th Ave project. So what we want to clarify today is there is a commitment to include gates or other infrastructure methods to create flexible spaces. And this would really further support and clarify that ability to close that space to vehicular traffic for gatherings within George Floyd Square and aligning all of those decisions through continued community engagement with final design to ensure the location, functionality, and just making sure like those requests for public space are met so we can have those gatherings continue. Preserving space for arts and memorial is making sure we're integrating all of those arts memorial spaces within the design so as a part of a cohesive vision that educates people about what happened here and the spirit of the community coming together. And one thing that has been central, probably should have had it earlier in this presentation, but preserving that no vehicle will go over this, travel over the space where George Floyd was murdered, and working with the family and community on what a memorial would look like to ensure that place is preserved. This does provide opportunity to accommodate all the existing art memorial that would be within the right-of-way, while also providing space for new arts and memorials. And further to clarify that is the fist sculptures were very important to members of the community, so this does provide those median gateway treatments at all 4 entrance points to the square, as well as making sure the traffic circle does come back in the center of 38th and Chicago to allow those spaces for plantings, fist sculptures if they want to come back and working with the community. And there's even more details that like we have a commitment to work with the community on as far as what elements could go in those spaces to make them more functional. We know that the community's been doing plantings and waterings. There might be ways in which we could integrate elements like water connection spigots or others so people aren't dragging buckets or hoses in the square. And that's what's important as we move ahead to make sure like there's an understanding that there's a commitment for Public Works to continue to work with the community on a lot of those final design elements to make sure the space is successful. I am highlighting a slide that Mary Altman from Arts and Cultural Affairs shared last week, so there's clarity that all of the spaces that have been defined as memorials through the community engagement process are identified, and we have found spaces and homes for each of those that would be cohesive with how we would put the street back together. Another aspect of just designing streets for the neighborhood, this was an ongoing question of, is this for tourists or is it for residents? And making sure we find that balance of like, can it be both? So it's just prioritizing the needs and experiences of those residents, workers, and just still recognizing it is a place that accommodates visitors and tourists from all over the world. So this would be restoring all modes of transportation access, expanding safe, accessible, and convenient multimodal activity within George Floyd Square, and then also providing the opportunity to revitalize vacant storefronts and existing businesses. This is an example, Plymouth Ave North and North Minneapolis, where it would be very similar design how Chicago Ave could look, where you have safety treatments, you have a bikeway, space for trees, and a lot of intentional traffic calming. And lastly, this is highlighting just the recommendation, showing there's key features that we're committed to integrate for flexible spaces and gatherings. I just call attention, one thing that we'd really like to advance here is what's called a raised intersection, similar to what's at Nicollet Mall downtown. While it's not a pedestrian plaza, it will feel more like a plaza because it'll be a flat raised intersection that would be cohesive between the future of the People's Way site as well as the George Floyd Memorial. That would really make the place feel pedestrian forward and have that integrated feel of a gathering place. As I said, arts and memorials are a key central aspect of being accommodated in all parts of the design. And all aspects of pedestrian safety, traffic calming, thinking about bump outs, medians, raised crossings for the trails, narrowed travel lanes, pedestrian scale street lighting, every tool in the toolkit we have to reinforce safe, accessible spaces that prioritizes the pedestrian experience, we're putting in this design. Green space and stormwater management, as I said, right now there's really no green space out there. Right now there's no boulevards, it's primarily hardscape, and this would provide over a half acre of new green space, almost all of it which would be functional stormwater management features that would treat water. Restoring transit service. On the layout, you'll see the small red T's. Those are where we have worked with Metro Transit to find the places that would work for restoring transit. On the graphic, you'll see restoring all ages abilities on both Chicago Ave, south of 38th, as well as a new shared use trail that would be part of a longer term vision of having a new bikeway along a longer section of 38th with future capital investments as well. This would maintain access to homes, businesses, driveways in a really thoughtful manner, and then have a level of on-street parking to make sure that either residents have access to parking near their houses. We know there's some disability parking zones in the square, as well as near some of the businesses on the 3700 block. The last design slide that I will share is Metro Transit has been a key partner in this conversation with the D line and the Route 5. So making sure anything that is done with new stations is very intentional and scaled appropriately for the neighborhood. And they have mentioned and wanted to bring forward in our community engagement that they would be very open to having transit stations that reflect community. And here they've shared a few other examples, whether it's from the Phillips neighborhood or North Minneapolis, where they have partnered with community groups to integrate art into those shelters that further reflect the needs, values of the community. And just lastly, I may not have said this, and there's a lot of talking points I could have had in many slides, but the streets are old and there's a lot of work that they do need. They do not reflect the current needs and uses in George Floyd Square as far as like how there's accessible spaces and how it's being used. There's a lot of pedestrian needs and there's a lot of improvements to be made. And through the amount of work that we've done on our street projects, whether it's through development projects or coordinating with our private developments, it's critical to align your street and infrastructure investments with other elements, such as, like in this case, the Memorial or the People's Way. What we wouldn't want to happen is like those aren't planned for, and then you have a street project that would have to come later or would be impacted by utilities. And continuing just to set a canvas so all of those things can continue to come forward in a cohesive manner without multiple disruptions or potentially things being impacted in the future. So with that said, I'll just circle back. The requested committee actions before us today are to approve the concept layout for 38th and Chicago Avenue for George Floyd Square project, and then authorizing the negotiation with private properties to acquire easements and additional right-of-way if necessary for the project. That concludes my presentation, and I'll stand by for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you for the very comprehensive presentation and for some of the revisions that you've made after conversations. Really appreciate that. I know that I want to welcome Councilmember Jenkins, who's joining the committee today as a guest too. Thank you for being here. And we'll just open up with questions. I see Councilmember Osmond first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for that presentation. I have a question. You talked about the three different options: pedestrian plaza, transit mall, and flexible options. What I heard, you talked about just the flaws and the problem it can create for example, pedestrian plaza, no transit, no bus, could create, and no traffic cars, could create a burden and problem to the neighbors that could be worried about speed. That's one. And the other one is transit mall, almost has the same problem, except the buses will go through. But I haven't heard a lot of flexible option, a lot of concerns or flaws, or I only heard about the good things like improving traffic, safety, preserving history and all that. As I talk to people, having this street open and having this flexible option, some people might think that, it's erasing history and it's really closing, taking the pedestrian plaza, it's more preserving what happened there and so on. So what are some of the, I would say, flaws or problem that you heard from the resident, or concern you heard from the resident on the flexible option? What are those? If you can name one or two, that would be super helpful. Because I hear a lot of great things about this, but not heard about any concerns from the resident or from the Public Works.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, Councilmember Osmond. I should be really clear and about that is there's no consensus 100% either way. People feel very passionate about a ped mall. Beyond what I've shared in this presentation of different ideas, there is nothing close to consensus. Like there's a lot of strong opinions about the pedestrian plaza, about the flexible, about the transit mall. And I will say, like, you're very astute to pick that up, is yes, there's a lot of concerns of the elements of having traffic return, and can it be like a lot of the gathering space that was there when the intersection was closed back in 2020. So I by no means meant to erase any feelings or emotion and feedback from the community. That is clearly still there, and I think both sides, as far as whether you like one concept or the other, there's a lot of passion on all sides of what this project wants to mean. So if I misconstrued that, like that's probably a little bit of an error in my presentation, but yes, the community is deeply divided on like where the streets wants to look like. So thank you for really calling that out.
No, I was just, depending on the survey and what do you hear from the neighbors, having in the pedestrian plaza, there's a lot of, no buses, no transit, neighborhood traffic issue. That is, that's just what folks are saying and what folks are concerned. But I was wondering if you heard anything from the community having the flexible option, some of the concerns or themes that you heard that they might not like this option.
Yes, Chair, Councilmember Osmond, I would say one of the things that people said is it worked in 2020, it can work now,
Okay.
and about we need more just dedicated space for gathering, pedestrian plaza, like just to have as much space as possible in remembrance of the sacred space in that area. So I will clearly articulate that those are definitely things that we consistently heard as more space. And what I'm also trying to bring forward is all the aspects we need for like fire code to make sure like our fire department can get through there and the minimum requirements to meet those, both the state and local fire code, as well as any potential aspects of the state statute for any potential ped mall. So like we're taking all the aspects of what if people told us, what's the technical work, what are our plans and policy says, and then what are the legal requirements, and bringing them together. So I don't think there was any, it's not a one topic, you do this, it has to be this way. It's bringing a culmination of all of those things together and trying to use that to have an informed recommendation that we're bringing forward today. And is super complex, and just making sure I started the presentation before anything is, this is extremely like important place where someone was murdered, and layering that on top of already challenging work that we have in Public Works to design streets to be many things. I just want to reflect that like this is super challenging to like bring all those perspectives together.
No, thank you. I really appreciate the work you have put and the Public Works have put, and I believe, and I'll tell my colleagues that we should definitely move forward and vote on this as soon as possible. And I respect the different opinion from the community, and I respect Council Member Jenkins, who has been here for longer than anyone else, and also Council Member Jason, who represent the area. So I'll just leave in my comment there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Osman. I do have a couple questions for the attorney on this committee, and it's about this new statute, because it was the first I was hearing today that we have the authority to create a pedestrian mall, but we have to have 50%, we have to have an ordinance and a public hearing with 50% of people approving it, which I've never heard of before, and I'm wondering if you could shed a little bit of light on what that would look like, what the review has been of that new statute so far.
Chair Cashman, to be honest, we have not encountered this new statute before, So, I mean, Director Sexton sent it to Ms. Spohr and myself. We'd have to review that and answer any specific questions at a different point, but we were not involved in the passage of the statute, so we have not reviewed that.
Is that something that you would be able to provide this committee with? Because I know that there's a lot of interest for establishing pedestrian malls. You know, it could be, I understand that this is a flexible proposal that would allow for such pedestrianization in the future if conditions change and you know, even if our ability to use this new statute changes as well. And so I think it would be really useful for us to understand what the new legalities are under that statute so that we can use it as a tool.
Chair Cashman, absolutely, we can provide some information about the legal requirements. On a general summary, I can say whatever the state has said that we have to do to establish a pedestrian mall, whatever requirements they say that we have to make the findings, we'll have to make those findings and we'll have to have them supported by data and facts. We won't be able to just make the finding that this is a good thing for the community without having the data behind that, because the state will ask for that. So if we meet those requirements, we'll be able to do that, but we will be required to make those findings and have those requirements per
Okay.
the new state statute.
Yeah, it'd be great to know what those requirements are, and yeah, if you could follow up with a memo on that when it's convenient for you, I think that'd be really helpful. I do want to ask as well, you know, how the community could envision the closure of the street to vehicles, because I think it's really important that we do emphasize that the flexible option does allow for this to be used as a gathering space and to not have cars there. But what are the parameters for that? I know you've put a lot of images of some of these gates that could be installed, but at what point, like, would it be weekends? Would it be evenings? When would those gates come down and block cars? And how did the community discuss what that might look like?
Chair Cashman, thank you. That's a really good question. And what I wanted to center is this has to be all done with the community. This has to be Public Works with the community, not Public Works saying, here's where the gates go, here's the times. It has to be with continued engagement of what do those gates or features want to look like? Could they integrate art? And all those aspects to really bring down the administrative burden to make it the ease of access, whether it's, you know, how efficient that can be, but that can't be done in a silo just by Public Works. And that's what I really want to emphasize is much like all aspects of this project is engaging with the community, members in the square, caretakers who have been there, like what do they want to see and how do they want to partner with us to help make those decisions and recommendations.
And then timing-wise, how are you envisioning the caretaking of the memorials and the art as it relates to this reconstruction project? I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to have to be moved or redone, and that's going to be pretty disruptive, but it's my understanding that in conversations I've had this week that it's better to lay the foundation of this new street and then to be able to rebuild memorials rather than rebuild memorials and then have them be disrupted by a reconstruction later.
So Chair Cashman, I'll answer your last part first, and then I'll hand it over to Mary. Yes, like through working through a lot of like development projects or adjacent, having the infrastructure in place, especially very old infrastructure that could potentially be impacted by how wide sidewalks get when you get to drainage and utility connections, it's very desirable to like have that figured out first as compared to retrofitting something and then potentially having everything else have to change it or impact it, which we strongly prefer not doing and not going down that path. I just think we have enough experience that like that is definitely a risk and a risk that we would like to avoid. For your other questions, I will let Mary introduce herself and answer those.
Madam Chair, council members, I'm Mary Altman. I'm the Public Arts Supervisor for the city. So I just first want to say that there is no other site like this in our city, right? And so even though Public Works and Public Art have been collaborating for a long time on what to do with artworks in the right-of-way when there's a construction project, you know, and we always have artworks in the right-of-way where there's a construction project. Every year we are moving stuff around. Like, for example, in Councilmember Chavez's ward right now, MnDOT has a major project under the Hiawatha Lake, at the Hiawatha Lake interchange. We've had an artwork there by Satu Jones for many years. We're using this as an opportunity to conserve some of it. We are also using it as we have to reconstruct some of it because some of it's in the pavement, and so we have to actually rebuild it. We've been doing that hand in hand with Satu, who worked with the road designers to do that work, and as part of it, we're also, this little plug, but we are commissioning a 5,200 square foot mural under the bridge that Satu originally envisioned in 2007. So we're finally doing that, and the call is open if anyone wants to apply. But we regularly do this. We use this as a time to really have a conversation with the artist about their intentions and what they'd like to see happen, and if they'd like to see conservation happen at this time, and to put the artists and the conservators together to talk about that, sometimes to also talk about how the artwork can become more durable, more protected from vehicles. Any art on a road gets hit by a car multiple times in its lifespan. But this is a unique situation, and the artists have created works of protest, and we also recognize that. And so we are working with a conservation firm that has been at the square, working with Rise and Remember and the artists for 4 years now. And they know the caretakers, they know the artists. I know a number of the artists. Some artists may choose not to really engage in a city project because they're still actively protesting against the city, and we respect that. Mm-hmm. And we also respect the work that Rise and Remember is doing, and that they are going to continue to conserve work, remove work, as they have been for 4 years. But we also have to plan for the infrastructure project and engage the artists and the caretakers in envisioning what that looks like. And that's a delicate process. And so we're engaged in planning right now and interviewing and beginning to interview community members and artists about their vision for how the work comes back. But also we heard really strongly from the community that they want an active memorial during construction. And so Public Works and Public Art have been talking about what does that look like. And it's not necessarily putting things in storage. It might mean moving things to the next block or to the People's Way while that block is under construction. And it does mean maintaining access for the community and for visitors. And so this can be unlike any project. And it's really unlike any place we've ever worked before.
Okay. Thank you. Vice Chair Koski?
Oh, thank you, Chair Cashman. I just had a follow-up question about the state statute and the pedestrian information. And when we get that back, I think it would be helpful to understand or have a deeper understanding of where our city regulations then, and can we create boundaries? I guess my question or example would be, it would be my intention that those that are in the impacted area or in the surrounding area or in the city, but if we had individuals who were coming from out of state to come and to a public hearing or out of the country, like how would we mitigate some of that, and having a conversation as colleagues of how we would want to make sure that public hearing was set up. And I don't know if the state statute goes into such detail, so I think this probably warrants a little bit more conversation with the chair and I, just because this is going to come back full circle with Nicollet Mall as well. So, okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jenkins?
Thank you, Chair Cashman, and thank you for allowing me to attend this meeting and to speak. I guess I just wanted to add a little bit of historical context to this conversation. I started working at 38 in Chicago in 2004. I worked with a group of folks. We called ourselves the Minnesota Renaissance Initiative. Some of the members were the late David Rubador, who was the Director of Neighborhood and Community Relations, the former Senator Jeff Hayden, the the head of the Emmett Till Foundation, Deborah, I'm blanking on her last name, but a number of community leaders, and we started this project to reimagine 38th in Chicago. That work led to the 38th in Chicago Small Area Plan, which subsequently transformed 38th in Chicago from about 20% occupancy, which was a furniture store, a gas station, and Worldwide Outreach Church. Those were the only businesses at 38th in Chicago. Subsequently, the Chicago Fire Arts Center came into existence in about 2010. And then the building across the street was purchased. There were coffee shops. Wing Young Huey, international photographer, came in, and that spurred a number of new developments at 38th in Chicago. In 2019, that intersection was 85% occupied. We had a thriving business association at that intersection. And then in 2020, George Floyd was murdered. And that shifted the entire context of what 38th in Chicago meant to that neighborhood, or those four neighborhoods, I should say, to the city of Minneapolis, and to the entire world. I mean, I can't even count the millions of times that the image of George Floyd under the Cup Foods signage has been displayed all around the world. It has to be in the millions. And so that has catapulted this intersection into a very historical context. I say all of that to say that subsequently, after the murder of George Floyd, there have been hundreds of conversations about how do we remember the event that happened there, as well as if you go to George Floyd Square now, it's not just about George Floyd. It's about Dante Wright. It's about Breonna Taylor. It's about Eric Garner. It's all of these people who have lost their lives to the state, to the injustices that we all recognize as injustices in our society. And so it's really important that we invest in this community to demonstrate that we do recognize the disinvestments that created the conditions that led to that murder, but also to lay a foundation so that we can create a place of social justice, of racial healing, of understanding of each other in more profound ways, that we can move beyond the divisions in our communities, that we can move beyond the racism, the sexism, all the issues that deeply impact how we live in this society. And I think this intersection has an opportunity to do just that. Prior to the murder of George Floyd, I worked with hundreds of community members to create a plan called the 38th Street Thrive Plan, which called for a Center for Racial Healing. This was before the murder of George Floyd, because guess what? Racism has been a problem for a very, very, very long time. It's nothing new. All of the issues that are laid out in the quote 24 demands are addressed in the 38th Street Thrive Plan. It calls for community ownership. It calls for the reconstruction of 38th in Chicago and the entire 38th Street corridor, for that matter. We created cultural districts to be able to include 38th Street as a cultural district, which when we look at all the cultural districts across the city, 38th Street is probably the smallest one. But the reason why we were able to determine that it is a cultural district is because of the history of redlining that has been a part of this community for decades. This project will, in my mind and in my hopes and desires, transform some of that disinvestment, some of that, I guess, redlining that has created these conditions, and it'll lay a foundation for a meaningful memorial that will be planned in deep connection and communication with the community. So I don't have a vote on this committee, but I would urge my colleagues to consider the wonderful presentation that Nathan Kostner provided for us, and hopefully take some of my comments and move this to the next phase so we can have a broad discussion on the council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for those comments. I do think that we should move forward this item to the full council this cycle so that we can take action on it. I'll make the motion to move forward without recommendation so that we can have more discussion at the full council. I think it's 2 weeks from now. We still have 2 weeks for folks to continue to have conversations in their community and with staff as they wish. And I'll call on Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Councilmember Cashman, and I'll save most of my remarks for that full council meeting. I'll support moving forward without recommendation. I don't support the city's plan, and I think that I'm bringing forward in terms of a perspective that is oftentimes forgotten about in the city of Minneapolis, a voice in our community who oftentimes is left out of conversations, and a voice in our community who oftentimes is disregarded in our city. You know, in the summer of 2020, I think folks often forget what happened in that summer. And what happened was that the police department decided to murder George Floyd in Ward 9 and decided to cause trauma and pain to our residents in the city of Minneapolis that caused a worldwide racial reckoning. Our police department did that, which has led us to a settlement agreement with MDHR, which is going to give us a consent decree with the federal government, which has caused mistrust in our community. And the conversation that we are having today would have never happened if police accountability would have been this city's #1 priority. If this city government believed in having a professional and accountable and constitutional police department, we would not be having this conversation if our police department did not decide to murder George Floyd on broad daylight. So when we talk about that it's time to move forward, I think about, okay, let's move forward, and let's move forward the right way. Let's move forward by addressing the needs of our community members, and let's move forward with addressing the concerns that neighbors have. We're talking about tearing up a street without talking about the investments that 38th Street Thrive deserves and needs. We're talking about tearing up a street while there are folks that are unsheltered and unhoused in our community. We're talking about tearing down a street without talking to community members about what they need. We're talking about tearing down a street without ever coming back to the community and saying, what do you actually need to improve your life and your conditions to live a better life in your neighborhood? We left you abandoned in the summer of 2020. again, we left you abandoned in the summer of 2020, and now we're coming back to say, here is a plan that isn't going to improve your housing situation, that isn't going to improve your economic challenges. And I don't support, as I mentioned in the last meeting, the plan that is in front of me. I think there is a way to address the concerns that community members have. I think there is a way to be more sensitive to the considerations that community members have. I think that we could do a lot better, in my opinion. But you know what? I'm going to save most of my remarks for the full council meeting as we address this issue. But the reality is that we would not have to be in this situation if we transformed our police department, if we would have invested in the 38th Street Thrive Plan years ago. And instead, now we're talking about, it's okay, let's move forward for some folks in the community, but not everyone. So I'll support moving forward with our recommendation. I don't support the current plan as is, and I made that very clear in the last meeting when we discussed this. But, you know, even when we hear the presentations, we start by acknowledging the pain and trauma that community members are having here. And I keep thinking about, why do we keep mentioning that? And I think the reason it keeps getting mentioned is because folks know something is happening here and it's wrong. So we continue to repeat every single time we do a presentation that we have to acknowledge what happened here, because we know that what's happening is wrong. We start by saying construction won't happen until after the murder, the anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. And I think you have to think about why that's being said. It's because what's happening here is wrong. So you know you have to do it after the anniversary of when the police department murdered him in George Floyd Square. So, again, I don't support the plan. I will support moving it forward to full council with no recommendation so we can have the debate at full council and figure out what we're going to do there.
Thank you, council member. You know, I just want to say that I think everyone acknowledges that not much has been achieved in terms of police reform in the city. And so that's a separate conversation and a conversation that needs to be had, and this is being conflated with that as well. And this is a public works investment that I think the community deserves.
I think members should speak for themselves and not for other people, because we definitely have differences of opinions. That comment you just made, that's your comment, not most, whatever you just said.
That I'll speak for myself, sorry. That's how I feel, that not enough has been done on police reform in Minneapolis. But let's take this to full council. All in favor of the motion to move forward without recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. So with that, we've concluded all business to come before the committee today. Thank you all, and with no objection, we stand adjourned.